Hi, everyone. This is the 50 States Highpointing podcast and YouTube channel. What started off as a project for a communications class has turned into something that I actually love doing. I have the privilege of providing the platform for people to talk about the extraordinary things they do in the outdoors. Highpointing is the challenge of reaching the highest elevation in each of the 50 states. Highpointers don't get paid for their hobby. No one is sponsored by an outdoor company, and people fit this challenge into their everyday lives that also include careers and family. I found through these interviews that people who attempt this challenge are incredible and genuinely enjoy talking about their experiences. If you consider yourself a Highpointer and you want to share your story on this podcast or interview, please send me an email at 50stateshighpointingpodcast@gmail.com. It has been a pleasure speaking with every Highpointer. I hope you enjoy. So everyone, I'm here with the co-editors of the official Highpointing Club's magazine, Apex to Zenith, Shea and Tommy Burns, brothers-in-law, and Highpointers. So Tom and Tommy, thanks for being here. And can you tell us a little bit about what you do for the Highpointers Club? And then we'll get into your highpointing story and what brought both of you to the outdoors and your interest in climbing.
Sure. Yeah, we're happy to. Yeah. We appreciate the opportunity for the Highpointers Club. And we learned of the Highpointers Club fairly recently, right? I mean, probably about a year and a half ago. And we're really intrigued by it. Maybe you can give a little bit of the background as to how Tommy discovered it first.
Yeah, so I think it's important, before we kind of get into what we do, is how we got there a little bit. And it's not a long journey, like you said, but, for me, I'm a father of three boys. I'm married and live in central Massachusetts. And, we have bought a little place up in New Hampshire. And we want to start hiking the 4,000 footers in the White Mountains. Right. And
cool.
In that hiking fraternity, there's a lot of lists. There's a ton of hiking lists out there. So I was on different websites and checking things out, and mostly for the 48 footers. And it said other lists. And it said Highpointing. And I clicked on it and never heard of it. Right. So I read that and I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. Getting to the highest point in all 50 states. Right. I looked at it a little bit more and I noticed that, only less than 1,000 people had done it, all 50 ever. And that was the first thing that jumped out at me. I said, okay. I was at a time where, I had one son going off to college. The next one was going to be going soon. And I just had more time. Right. And, I spent a lot of time. They play sports and those types of things. And, Tom and I were athletes growing up. So we have that, an athlete's heart a little bit. And, what am I going to fill my time with instead of watching? And I just kind of wanted to start participating a little bit more in life than watching it. And I wanted the boys to really embrace the outdoors as they were and continue to do that. So anyway, when I dug into the Highpointing thing, I said, I want to see the states. I want to see all 50 states. Everybody wants to go to Aruba and the tropical islands. They want to go to Italy and they want to go, everybody wanted to go somewhere. And I said, I saw pictures of the national parks and it was just something where I wanted to go there. And I knew that if I told him, the only person who would say, let's do it. So I kind of held on to it a little bit. And, because once I said it out loud, it was going to happen. And I didn't want to do it alone. So I held on to it. So then I think you came up and visited for at
the beach for over 4th of July.
Right. So he came up
2021.
A little prior to that.
And so what year was this?
2021. So this is a little bit before. That was our first trip, was July.
Yep.
So before that, he was up locally in Massachusetts, and we hiked Wachusett Mountain. So I had started walking locally, just in central Massachusetts, and Wachusett is a mountain that's definitely a little more competitive, so to speak, and a little more real. So we went there, and I said, this is a perfect time, and I mentioned it to him. I said, hey, I was looking at this list, and it's been really on my mind. It's the Highpointing list. And he looked at me and said, well, we're Highpointers now. And from that, a month later, we started our first one. And it's only been a year and a half, and we have 13 down already. Yeah. And that started our
journey.
But there was a little more to the conversation than just the element of Highpointing, because we were both really intrigued by it. We thought, like, wow, what a cool idea. And then we started talking about, what is kind of the philosophy of this whole thing? Because I think we had started saying how, as we looked at it, it felt kind of transactional, almost like, let me check them off. Right. I got this one.
Peak bagging.
Peak bagging. Right.
Yeah, that whole peak bagging idea. And we were like, well, that's cool, but we would like to really experience these places. And there's a lot of cool things in these different states and near these high points. So we kind of loosely built out our philosophy of what we wanted to do with this whole high pointing adventure.
Right.
And we basically said a few things, right? We said, we want to just, we want to get to all the high points. We said we want to make sure when we do it that we find the things, whether it be events, whether it be good restaurants, whether it be other things going on within that area, so we can really experience it. And I think we kind of like half convinced ourselves, like, yeah, this is great, we're going to do it. And then
it's like I said, I saw that 400 people had only done the 50, and maybe again less than 1,000 had done the 48. And I said, well, we're getting a little bit older, we have some time. How are we going to fill it? But I also was thinking, like, all right, what do I have that's obituary level right now in my life? What is going to be in there that's awesome? Right? And
that's a good way to say it.
Maybe awesome to me, but not to the world. And I'm like, well, that's as obituary level as you can get. Right now, the only skill that I have, I think, is I'm picking out restaurants in areas that I have never been to that are always pretty good.
Right, sure.
Thank you. But we wanted to raise the bar a little bit and take the things that we like and just kind of expand it and make the world a little bigger. And it's been unbelievable so far. Yeah.
Well, and then adding the family element to that is kind of like leaving a legacy, like your kids can say, my dad and my uncle climbed the 50 highest peaks in every state, or the 50, high points in each state. And that is something so cool that they're going to maybe pass on to their kids or something. And I think that high pointing is so unique because of its accessibility. There are exceptions. Obviously, there's some extended logistics that are involved in some of the extreme high peaks.
Right.
But generally, it's something that a lot of Americans can do, and they can almost start in their own backyard, again, with exceptions.
I remember many times as we were at the tops of some of these different mountains and as we were walking, Tommy would call home and he would talk to my nephews, he would talk to Spencer, or he would talk to Griffin. And it always struck me how fired up and excited they were about what he was doing.
Yeah.
It was always like, oh my God, Dad, that's awesome. I can't believe it. You're at the top of the mountain.
You never do anything.
It was like, you could tell they were first, they were not surprised, but they were, proud of you, but they were also excited about it, which was cool.
Yeah, it's funny because family it comes into it a little bit, right? So again, not to harp on the kids in the youth sports scene and all of that, but I was in that world for 20 years. I coached high school football and youth football, and I didn't have a fall free until 2 years ago, right? And it was just, I was always on the sidelines or coaching or something like that. I always thought I needed to be there for every game and I needed to be there for everything. And for the most part, I am. I mean, that's kind of what we want to do. But, I'm at my best for my family when I'm at my best for myself. So this has really been really good for everybody, where I get to go away. I come home and they're telling me stories of what they did when I was gone. What I might have missed. They don't tell you anything. It's, hey, you start. There's nothing more to say. Yeah. So being away, it's created some more stories and stuff like that. But I think, Tom's married to my sister Jackie, right? So we got brothers-in-law. And so my mom, Grammy Ginger, and, talking about family and reactions to what it is. And again, I asked him because I know he's insane, right? And he would do it. So the other thing is, when you ask Grammy Ginger, when I ran it by her, I said, hey, here's what we're thinking of doing. And she says, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would you guys do that? Then that's when I know we need to do it.
We're in.
And you made the right decision.
And we're going across town for dinner. Why would you go there and say, so when she says it's insane, don't do it. That's all we need to do for a reason to do it. And she's been great throughout the ride too. It's cool to hear her get involved, and it's been a good thing. So,
Now, one of the things we started doing right at the very beginning was, first of all, we're like, okay, how are we going to remember what we're doing? We're going to all these different places and things start to blend together. So we created an Instagram site, We Summit the USA. And we started just writing up little blurbs about each of the different mountains, taking a few pictures and putting them up there. And we were shocked at how enthusiastic, our friends were certainly, but then this kind of growing group of Highpointers who were like, oh, I've done that one. Because we would we would tag the mountain and the location and stuff. And people are really excited about the whole idea and the concept. So it's been.
Yeah, I found that too. It was interesting when I joined the Facebook group, 50 States Highpointing Facebook group. I thought, maybe this is just my thing that I can share with a couple of friends or something and family. But this is really a movement.
It is.
And it's fun to see other people's excitement. And it's kind of like through these different platforms, you can really cheer people on and share in that excitement. And I'll see somebody on a peak that I really want to go on, like when the weather warms up, Mount Hood. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to follow this, and what advice do you have? What gear do you recommend? And you do really feel a sense of community within Highpointers.
Yeah, without a doubt. Look, I think what you said there, Lauren, about, people cheering people on. Yeah. It's a really, it's just a great group of people. Like it's a really sort of close-knit group of people who want to help each other, who want to learn from each other. And it's why we were so excited when we heard, what you were doing here and the podcast, because I do think it's kind of one of the best kept secrets out there is the Highpointer Club and, kind of all of the cool things about it. So this is just a great way to, kind of connect with the community and get people understanding it a little bit more.
Totally.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
There's always little pockets of the world. We're old. I mean, I'm 49 and I've been involved in different things, whether it's, the high school hockey world in Massachusetts, it's its own world, right? Horse racing, is its own world. We've been involved a little bit of that. But then poker, I did with the poker rooms, but there's all these different things. And the Highpointers is just like that, right? So once you're in it, you're in something that feels like you're part of something bigger, right? And I think the totality of the mission of trying to get through it is what really I think sets it apart. It's a journey, and it takes a long time. It's not going to be something quick in this instant world that we live in now. Yes. That's kind of what
exactly
to be outside and the challenge of going up a mountain. I mean, it's not anything. Everybody can do it. You train by doing it, and we started out and with every expectation that we were going to learn along the way, just like you said. So we did join the Highpointers Club day one. When we found out, all right, what that is, let's join that, right? So we joined the club. Yeah. We followed the Facebook group. And because we wanted to find out things from the people who've already done it. We're curious people. We're not people who think we know everything. But we're not going to start. We're not going to wait to start until we know everything either. So we got going.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We're kind of building the plane in midair is just fine, right? And that's the only way we know how to do it. And it's been really, really an educational thing. We were kind of outlining all the high points that we did in preparation for this and kind of just listed them out and what we thought were, what we learned along the way, what was the message, what was the key point. And when you look at it in its totality, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's
from, and you're in sort of a little bit of a different starting point out west. We're starting in the Northeast where the whole mountain situation is a lot different. So our very first one was Jeremiah in Rhode Island, which was 800 feet or so. And I remember we were like, this is cool. This is great. Let's go do this. We get there and we're both sort of like, hey, wait a minute. What is this whole Highpointing thing? We walked 100 yards, we saw a little rock. We're like, all right, this is cool. Now we did find a book, which was sort of like, the guidebook that people who were Highpointers wrote in and said, we've been here and this is the date, which we thought was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, like a register?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and but it's like
in an old military ammunition box, right? It was.
Yeah. That's classic right here.
Yeah, it's like we're looking around, we're like, is this the right spot? Like, what are we doing? Like, we came from the beach. I was down there and Narragansett in Scarborough Beach. And
it validated that. Okay, we're in the right spot. First of all, we're at the right place, and there's a lot of people doing this, and people wrote, cool notes. some of them, for us, it was the very first one. For others, though, they're like, all right, how to knock this one off. I've already done X amount, and now I finally got this one. Because we found some of them are, you have to be committed, right? Like Delaware, eat bright azimut.
Not every peak can be this euphoric moment or something. And a lot of the peaks out here where I am, and for the listeners who don't know, I'm in Arizona, and I'm actually located in the state low point in Yuma, Arizona, by the Colorado River is the low point here. But a lot of the peaks out here, when you get to the summit, because everything else falls away from you.
Mount Purcell in Connecticut, where, you're actually coming down the other side. It's like in between, New York State and Connecticut. Massachusetts. It's like sort of right in the middle of the three.
The intersection.
And you're not exactly sure where the high point is.
Right.
There was a lot of searching around, and then we were so excited when we found the actual spot. And
so we were at the top. We might have been in New York or Massachusetts. We had to go down to get to Connecticut, the highest point in Connecticut. Right. So that was.
Oh my God.
But so you're actually higher right before you get to the high point in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Which is
wow, that's interesting. Right. But you can. It sounds like you can check off a lot. Just in that one visit.
Well, that's the thing, right? I think the difference that we found between, our location and your location is we are able, we did 4 over the course of a 3-day stretch down south.
Okay.
So we did Georgia, we did South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee.
Yeah.
We kind of call them the 4 corners because if you look at the map, that's where they are.
Yep.
And
that's right, they are. Yeah.
Yeah, we stayed in Asheville. We flew into Charlotte, went to Asheville.
Yeah.
And then we mapped that out, right? So,
and it was awesome. It was awesome because we got a chance, to see a lot of the country, different areas. Now, we did learn one lesson with regard to the high points in the East in the winter time period is be very aware of kind of the dates and, when you're doing your research about which mountains to do when.
Mount Marcy in New York, right? My son was playing high school football at the time, and he had a game, and we were going to go up he had a game on a Friday night, and we were going to go the next day and drive upstate to Mount Marcy, which is nearly basically Lake Placid, the Adirondacks, and do it that weekend, about middle of October, second week in October.
Right.
His game got moved to that Sunday because they were going to play at the Boston Red Sox AAA affiliate in Worcester on the field. And a pretty cool thing, moved to Sunday, so we just changed the date, right? So we moved it to when the event was. We were available. And that date so happened to be past November 1st, and we weren't thinking of that.
It was middle of November, November 15th.
And we just changed it because it fit within our schedule.
And we read, and it said, be careful about it. And we're like, whatever, we're doing it, right? Then we get there, and we realized why it says November 1st. We stayed in, and it was really cool, the lodge, right? LOJ's,
Adirondack Lodge.
The Adirondack Lodge, which was beautiful. Yeah. We were virtually the only people in it, which was odd and creepy.
Where is it?
It was snowy. It was really, really cold. And, we got up at the crack of dawn to go do it. And, it was a big adventure. We're out there. It's freezing. It's cold. We're like, this is great. Yeah. We're Highpointers. We're climbing Mount Marcy. Well, we realized why, because it was so cold. And, but it was also, as we were going higher and higher, water was kind of rushing down the mountain. So the trail was like a small river. So going up, we're getting wet. It's cold. We're like, oh my gosh, I kind of get
We're deliberate. We're not slow. Some would say slow, but we enjoy the talk and the stop and look around and,
And we're the
and we're going up and it's like, we were prepared for the weather conditions. We had food and all of that and had water, but we were going to start kind of at daylight. And then before, because it said 9 hours on Ultras. Takes 9 hours. So we're like, all right, we're a little bit slower. It'll take us 12. And I think it ended up taking us 15 that day. And so we started in the dark because someone had recommended the day before, you guys should get out of it.
We started in the dark. We ended in the dark.
Because it gets dark at 5 p.m., right? So,
that's right.
Again, we were thinking all right, the average on all trails, and then we don't use that anymore as a result of that. We kind of know our own pace and we establish our own pace. And
it is an average. So
or everyone's lying on all trails because they want to go think they're better than they are, or we're slow. But anyway.
Yeah. But it was an experience. I mean, if you think about kind of the learning journey, and we're only a quarter of the way through, so we've got a significant journey ahead of us.
Sure.
Especially when we get out west, kind of to the serious big mountains. But with everyone we've done, we've learned a little bit more. We've met more people. Right. We've gotten, smarter along the way,
right?
Which is the fun of it.
So advice, I guess, what we learned there is that was our 6th high point, and up until then we'd done 5, and we had done New Jersey, Massachusetts, our home states.
Right.
We had done Connecticut, and we did Rhode Island and Delaware, which are flat drive-ups. So we were like, we had 5, but 2 didn't count. We're like, hey, we need to legitimize ourselves and to ourselves, and to keep the ball rolling and have momentum. And we said, let's do Mercy. Because, we could have picked Vermont, we could have picked Maine or something closer and those types of things. And, and I think for me, it's like we got caught up in the pageantry a little bit. We're like, hey, we're going Lake Placid, the Miracle on Ice. We love that whole story. And, this Brooks, they remember, like, in the movie, they said, he explained why he wanted to coach the team and how he was going to do it. And he said, you think you're going to put a team together that's going to beat the Russians? And he said, yeah. And they said, well, that's a pretty lofty goal. And Herb said, well, that's why I want to pursue it. Right. And we were thinking, hey,
it's a classic American story
so like, hey, let's go there. Like my kids had played hockey up there, and it was just a place that was inspiring for us to be up there. And then reality set in pretty quick. And
but we felt, if we had to categorize where it kind of all got real for us, that was where it was. Like that was where this is a fun kind of adventurous thing we're doing, but it's also serious, right? And you're on these mountains, which are very, very real, can be very dangerous, and you got to be smart about it.
I think we always, we were doing everything intentionally, and we're trying to be careful here. We weren't into the wild, but I think that one was, really when I learned, I just learned what the human body is capable of there at the end. The last couple hours was just, it was long, it was cold, and we made it. You know what I mean? We made it. We're strong enough mentally to do it.
New Jersey is actually called Highpointing. So it's an easy one. It's High Point, New Jersey. And we started the day out. It just so happened coincidentally that there was a local balloon festival. So hot air balloons were going off bright and early in the morning. And also just so happens that, near where I live, there's a vineyard, Beneducci Vineyards, which is a really fun place where they end up having, they have bands and music and serve wine. And so that day ended up being, we went to the balloon festival. We went to High Point, New Jersey. It was a gorgeous, beautiful, perfect day. We climbed to the top. We met a bunch of really nice people. We came home. We went to this wine event where they were playing music and band was great. And we're just like, this is a fun day. He's like, you know what? I just realized they're not all balloon festivals and wineries.
It's not all balloon festivals.
As we're like freezing and trying to keep our hands warm and our feet dry.
It's almost like, I don't want to say it's good that you had that, troubling experience in New York State before you come out west to do these points here. But those peaks out east, with the exception of Mount Washington in New Hampshire, you might not need a guide. In fact, it's unlikely that you
don't really need a guide. Yeah.
Right. And so you really have to rely on your own skills and your own research. Yeah. And then you, from there, build confidence to do bigger mountains that require a guide. And I can tell you that those guys are really going to appreciate the experience that you've developed within your, just developing a sense of autonomy in the outdoors and on the mountains is so valuable.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's, we look back and it's like, hey, we should have looked at November 1st and said nothing after. As simple as that. If we said, we're close enough to November 1st, then it seems like a mild winter. It's not really, whatever justification we had.
Right.
Now we know November 1st meant November 1st. Like, it's kind of like trust
the knowledge and experience of those who have come before you.
Right.
And when I think about it from, the Highpointer magazine perspective and from the community perspective, that's what it's all about, right? It's about, hey, look, we're all excited about this. We're all involved in this. We all have different experiences. We all come from it from a different perspective. So the more that we're able to share that information, the more that we're able to help each other, the better. And so, that's really what the magazine is about.
How did you go from highpointing, as your individual goals or family goals to becoming the co-editors of the Highpointing magazine? Like, what was that transition like?
Yeah, sure. Well, so, the first thing you have to know about both of us is I don't know what the right word is for it. We're a little bit like obsessive, all in, like, okay, like if we're going to do the highpointing thing, we're going to do all of the highpointing thing. Yeah. So we're going to join the club immediately. We want to be involved in the club. We went to the very first convention that we could go to.
But I think part of our experience, we started in July of 2021, and the convention was in June of 2021. So we had 11 months under our belt before the first convention that we could attend. Right. And it was, so that just, we had that, right?
Yeah.
And some things in our bag.
And we were far enough down the path where I think we had 11 or so under our belt where we're like, this is awesome. We can go. The convention was in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And it was Mount Davis.
Yep.
And one of the things that is sort of, a cornerstone of the convention is the opportunity to climb that high point in the state that it's in.
Yep.
And the convention moves from location to location around the United States. So it so happened, it's sort of like the stars were aligned here where it was in Pennsylvania. It was relatively close for us to get to. It was a high point we hadn't done yet. So we're like, awesome, let's go do this. And so we went. First, we did the Maryland High Point, which is Hoyt Pratt Mountain, the day before. And that was such a great experience because we met so many people on the mountain who were going to the convention. So as we're going up the mountain, it's like, that's you're going to be at the convention. Yeah. So we started, having discussions with people. And then we actually, at the dinner, at the convention, I guess was it the first night dinner or second night dinner?
Second night.
Second night dinner. We ended up sitting at a table with, we sat at dinner with Shannon. And we're just like we always do, is we're just asking questions. We're talking. And we're like, so what's your whole story? How'd you get into this? And she is one of a very small number of women who have completed all 50. And we're like, that's phenomenal. Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
The story. And we actually ended up meeting her after dinner. We spent 2 hours talking.
Right.
And during that, we had a lot of ideas about, we're really enthusiastic about this. We think this is awesome. How can we get the word out to more people? And from that, she had recently joined the board. She's very involved now in the whole Highpointing Club. So she reached out to us probably 6 months after that and was like, hey, look, there's an opportunity here. We need somebody to step in and to help with the editing. And that's how it all happened.
Wow.
They're like, yeah, we're in.
So I guess it's, like you said, we're doing the Instagram thing, but we're not doing it every week, right? We're just kind of posting it there. But we think, some of the things we recommend and things that we do, if we like it, others will like it, and we like to not have influence, but just kind of be involved, in whatever that means. So when we went to the convention, you say, hey, we sat at the table, right? So the universe speaks sometimes to us through this whole journey, right? And it just happens in different ways, and we can talk about different ways. But I went down. We were a little bit late because I think we did a waterfall hike after the high point, and we did, on the way back because it was an hour ride to Mount Davis, right? So we were late coming to dinner, and there were no seats when we walked in the ballroom.
Right, that's right.
Okay, so it was just so we said, all right, let's just wait, right? So we kind of hung out a little bit, and some people had left. So when we went back in, the only seats available were at a table in the middle back. And so we sat there, right? And we don't really know anybody. Some people know anybody, some people. And they're, at the end of the dinner, they actually go through and they give out recognition awards, right? So they were listing off the 48 completists, the 49, and then the 50. And people would just stand up, right? And we were just trying to get any food that was left over from the waitress or something like that. So we're there like, is there anything left to eat and those types of things. But all of a sudden he said, and we have 150 completer in the room, and he named Shannon, and she's sitting at our table and she stood up. And I'm like, we were like, wow, like that's incredible. Yeah. And we had all kinds of questions about Alaska in a month, right? And we're like, she sat down, we're like, you did Alaska? And she's like, yeah. And we were kind of like, we'd love, do you have time to talk to us? And she's like, oh, I'm a little tired and that type of thing. And she was with her dad and her brother. And we said, oh, we get it. We'll be outside if you have some time. And then they came out and they were so generous. We sat down for almost 2.5 hours.
She was great.
And with those with three of them. And that was just, we learned a lot right there about, the seriousness of it. It's not always going to happen. It's not always going to happen the first time. Right.
It's not always wine glasses and hot air balloons.
There were times, exactly. It's not always balloon festivals and
it's just like, so you don't. Yeah. So we were just gaining knowledge. It was really, really good. And
I mean, look, there's so many things that you can do on this journey. And there are those people who are, the Shannons who are like, I'm going to do all of them. But there are so many other opportunities for people. Yeah. And that's really one of our perspectives and philosophies on the magazine is the magazine is really, really good. They've done a great job. They've worked really hard. There's a significant focus on the 48 completers, the 49 completers, the 50 completers, as there should be. Right, because that's sort of
it's a significant accomplishment. Yeah,
it's a huge accomplishment. What we're gonna try to do moving forward, though, is we're gonna continue that and keep that, but we want to try to expand the focus to more people who are earlier in their journey. Yeah. More people who are like, hey, I've done 5. What should the next ones be? How do I end up? Which ones can I bundle together? Yep. What are some cool things to do in these different locations? In order to get people inspired to get to the point where they're like, wow, I'm kind of all in now, and I can look.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like this far off kind of fantasy.
Yep.
So let's say you have someone whose first high point was in Florida, Britton Hill, which is, I think, 345 feet.
They're starting and working their way.
Yeah, they're starting, and they, might not feel like Denali in Alaska is attainable right now, but that's not the point of the Highpointers Club. Is you just have to start and you're immediately a member of the community.
Yes, absolutely. And the fact is, and we've seen this through the Facebook page that you started this all out from, is how many different people are at different points and are trying to ask really good questions about, hey, I'm doing that one. I'm thinking of doing that one.
Right.
What do I need to know about it? Mount Whitney, for example, the lottery. Okay, got to win a lottery to do Mount Whitney in California. Well, how does that
or the John Muir Trail?
work? Right? How do I do that? We tried last year and ended up not getting, not winning the lottery. So now we're going to be like, all right, how can we figure out how to do that better? The idea of it, at least from our perspective, is to enjoy it, right? To have fun in the environment, to see, the beauty of being outside, of the different mountain ranges, of, all of that, and your ability to set up your approach and what you're doing and have the right knowledge and be in good shape and do all the things that it takes to really fully enjoy that is such a big part.
Where we live, proximity matters, sure. And we were able to gobble up a bunch and learn on the way and train along the way. So just, there's a lot of different types of people in the Highpointers organization, the club, and those types of things. And, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, I'm getting excited talking about Rainier and Whitney and those types of things because we had our global summit was, and I think it was in October.
Yes, our global summit consisted of Tommy and I in New Hampshire,
right?
And we have a lot of room to grow
and a whiteboard.
Whiteboard.
But no, we were mapping out right in the first 13. Not that they were unplanned, but they were hey, when can we fit him in? What can we do? And then when we went to the convention, usually we tell friends, hey, what are you doing? And it's just, hey, I'm doing this thing called Highpointing, and they're interested for about a minute. And then they move on to a different topic because it's just a little bit foreign. And how do you explain it?
When you tell your friends and other family members, hey, I'm trying to reach the highest elevation in each state, what do they say?
They say
they think it's really cool.
Right.
They're like, wow, that's awesome. I didn't know that was something.
Right.
They usually say, like, which ones have you done?
Are you going to do Denali?
Are you going to do Denali?
Yeah.
Right.
But a lot of them don't even know Denali. I mean, some do. Like if they know a little bit about kind of, geography and mountaineering and so forth, they'll say that.
Yeah.
But a lot of them will say, what's your next? Which one are you doing next?
Yeah.
Which one have you done?
Okay.
Which are you doing next?
Right.
But you're right. They're just generally interested. Like if you told somebody you had a new hobby and they're interested for a little bit, whereas
you can't expect them to just latch on right away. I think
it's kind of like, but those are the conversations we had for a year, and it's like, oh, well, of course you two are doing that. You're nuts. Like that sounds like something you guys would tackle, and they would be like, oh, that's going to be expensive, or when are you going to find the time? And not that that's negative. It's just for us, it was always like. I kind of been saying we didn't start with the end in mind, right? That's not what we did, right? We're not going to start. How can we do Rainier, Whitney, Denali, and Honolulu, and Hawaii? No, we just said we're going to start this, and that's maybe that's a bigger thing in life. You just the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step.
Now, one thing that has happened, which has been fun and is sort of part of our whole approach here too, is people have been like, "That sounds really cool. I'd love to do one with you."
Right.
Which is like, that's great. We have our New Hampshire location. Our daughter, Julianne, actually lives in San Diego, where So now, she's out there, and when we tried to do the lottery for Whitney, she's going to do Whitney with us, and a bunch of her friends now are like, this is really cool. And they're involved in it as well. Mm-hmm. So, what we'd like to do is continue to get other people involved, understand it, and hopefully joining us on some of it.
I think we're so fortunate to live in such a geographically diverse country, really diverse in every way, but you can plan out this challenge in a way that works for you. So let's say you start on the East Coast and you're, going up hills, and then you advance to, something like New York State or New Hampshire, where the White Mountains are, and that becomes a little more challenging. Yeah. And then you can kind of plan out like a progression almost. So I'll give you an example. In New Mexico, Wheeler Peak, and in Arizona, Humphreys Peak, Humphreys Peak is 12,000 and some change, and then Wheeler Peak is 13,000 and some change. And both of them are walk-ups. There's a trailhead where you can park, and then you walk to the top. Now it's higher in elevation, I think, compared to the East Coast, but it's a good progression if you're trying to get up in elevation without technique.
Yes. Yes.
So you can kind of plan that out. And then once you achieve that, you can go, all right, well, maybe I can walk up Whitney on the John Muir Trail.
Well, Lauren, what is really important about what you just said too is, it's not necessarily, if you love the idea of being out in nature and climbing mountains, you can do all of these multiple times in different settings, right? There's multiple trails, there's multiple routes. If I do it in the fall, if I do it in the winter, if I do it in the summer, it's a completely different experience, right? So, depending upon where you are, it's fun to say, let's do something new and something different and check it off our list. But you also have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to do this one again and again and again.
Right. And I think, part of the kind of go back about what do people say, right? And so the people you talk to, and everyone's interested and everyone's supportive, and it's great. But for the first time, we went to the Highpointers convention, and that's when we were like, wow, these are our people. Because we could kind of dig and have a conversation. And it didn't stop after 5 minutes. And it was kind of like, so for us, as we were there for a few days, it was like, all right, we're all in the same boat, but we're not all the same, which is good. And it was one of those things where you're having a half-hour conversation, an hour conversation. You're talking to these people, and they're engaged, interested, and with recommendations and different perspectives. And it was really, that's kind of why I said, all right, we can lend ourselves to this from what our experience is, and we can share. And also really being a part of it, the organization, the club, and those types of things. One of the benefits for me was it's really, you can kind of, in this world where everything's instant, everything wants things fast, and you can kind of dive deep, and people will, hey, ask me about this online, you can communicate in a way that isn't rushed, because these are things you just can't pick off and discuss, right?
You're absolutely right. That's true.
As you start searching in the area, you can have different questions, and I just thought that was really, really a good benefit of being there in person with everybody, and part of being a member of the club.
And kind of back to your point about, when people ask you about it, it's refreshing to be able to then talk to somebody who really wants to dig deep, right? And so, like when you get into some of these Facebook pages and, some of the people who comment on Instagram, you can tell that they're really, either planning something themselves, so they want to understand better what happened, or they're just, kind of inspired and intrigued by like, wow, that's something I want to think about. So it's been a lot of fun.
And it does spark a sense of adventure in people that maybe don't have a lot. And also I think it's, sometimes when you tell someone what you're doing, especially if it's an outdoor adventure and it might be kind of niche, they don't understand, and that's okay. I sometimes experience that when I run a marathon or something and I tell someone, I just ran this marathon. And maybe that person isn't a runner and they will say, what place did you come in?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Well, the other thing there too, Lauren, which is so true, is when you do put it out there, like in your case, if you're running a marathon, if you say to people, hey, I'm running the Boston Marathon or the New York Marathon, there's a degree of accountability there that we found with the Highpointing Club as well. Yeah. It's like what Tommy was saying up front about, once he sort of said it out loud and it was out there, then I'm going to help him stay accountable. He's going to help me. And we'll find that happens. We're like, we haven't planned anything in a month. Like, we got to get something going here. Like, what are we doing next?
Are we Highpointers? It's like, hey, I thought we were Highpointers. But it's just, what happens, and it's fun.
You kind of can push each other to make sure that you're staying the course.
But I think you bring up a good point, right? So, I mentioned before we were both athletes, and I think coming from that is, Juliet, his daughter, went to North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So we become Carolina Tar Heel fans in every sport. And even prior to that, Mia Hamm was a soccer player there.
Right.
And I think what was the quote about leaning over exhausted?
The vision of a champion is somebody leaned over, drenched in sweat when nobody else is watching.
Right. And Anson Dorrance was her coach, driving in the offseason. He looked over to someone on the field, and he saw someone working out, and it was her, the best player in the country, off season back in the day,
by herself,
just exhausted. And he said, that's what it takes, right? Yeah. So kind of a mentality of an athlete is you have to be exhausted. You have to stretch your limits. You have to be doing all of that. Whereas the hiking, you don't really need to do it that way, right? So in my mind, I understand what'd you finish, right? So mentally, when I started hiking, personally, it was always kind of like, I'm not fast enough. Or some friends like, hey, we go faster, and what are we doing? And, to throttle down and understand climbing a mountain is what it is, right? It's not done when you get to the top. You got to go down again. And it's just really about the journey upward and what it takes and the longevity of that climb, right? I always thought you needed results, you needed to score, and you don't when you high point.